This happened only a few nights ago. I'd just moved into this 2-story house in a quiet suburb, hoping the peace would spark my creativity. I sat at my desk, working late on a project. The glow of my computer screen felt comforting, but that night wasn't like the others. As I focused, I heard a faint thumping sound coming from the basement. I figured it was just the house settling. I tried to ignore it, but the sound kept coming back, like it wanted my attention. My heart raced a little. I paused to listen, and then I thought I heard a shuffling noise. It felt wrong, like something wasn't right. I glanced at the basement door, dark and silent, and a wave of unease washed over me. I didn't want to go down there, but the thumping transformed into a steady rhythm. It twisted my gut. Over the next few nights, the noises grew louder. I noticed odd creaks, like something shifted in the walls. There was a low hum that trembled through the floor. One night, I thought I heard my neighbor's dog barking. I peeked outside, but the street was deserted, lit only by flickering streetlights. Sometimes, I heard soft murmurs in the air. They were hushed, yet clear enough to freeze my thoughts. A feeling wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. I was convinced someone was watching from the shadows. Each time I tried to concentrate, the sounds would come back, pulling me further into their strange rhythm. My neighbor walked their dog late at night. They moved silently, like an eerie shadow. I wondered if they heard the sounds too or if it was just me. Each time I sat down to work, it felt impossible to block it out. I glanced at the basement door often, hoping it would stay quiet. Then came the night it escalated. The thumping changed into scratching, and I swore I heard a whisper call my name. Jenna. A voice that dripped with an unsettling mix of sweetness and tension. I sat frozen at my desk, unsure if I had really heard it or if I was losing touch with reality. My heart raced, begging me to do something. I stood up, fear coursing through me. I took a step toward the basement door, torn between curiosity and dread. Suddenly, I heard a loud crash behind it. I leaped back, heart pounding in my chest. What was happening down there? I didn't know what to do. I could barely breathe, but I felt trapped by my own curiosity. Slowly, I reached for the doorknob. The metal felt cold against my skin. I let out a shaky breath and hesitated. Then, a sound came from behind the door, a soft yet urgent thud. Was something trying to get out? My heart raced faster. I couldn't do it. I took a step back, my mind racing. I still don't know what happened next. The house felt different. I just knew I had to get out. But the door remained closed, and I felt I might never know what waited for me on the other side. I spent the next day trying to ignore the unease that had settled in my chest. I even attempted to write, thinking a creative escape might distract me, but the buzzing worry never left. Each creak of the floorboard sent a jolt through me, reminding me of the sounds from the night before. Around lunchtime, I decided to take a walk. I needed fresh air and a clear mind. I wandered the neighborhood, hoping to find some semblance of normalcy. But my thoughts kept drifting back to that basement. The whispers and scratches rang in my ears. I spotted my neighbor walking their dog. I hesitated for a moment but finally approached. "Hey!" I called out, trying to sound casual. "Have you ever heard any strange noises around here?" The neighbor paused, looking at me curiously. "Strange noises? Like what?" They seemed genuinely intrigued but not alarmed. I felt my face flush. "I mean, just sounds. I thought maybe you had experienced something odd." They shook their head. "Not really. It's pretty quiet here. You might just be getting used to the house." I nodded, but unease gnawed at my insides. After a brief chat, I headed home, knowing I needed a plan. Ignoring the basement wasn't working. I had to confront whatever was down there. As night fell, I steeled myself. I prepared to face it head-on. I grabbed a flashlight and took a deep breath as I approached the basement door. The cold metal of the doorknob felt familiar, but there was a weight to it now. I had a choice to make. I turned the knob and cautiously pulled the door open. The darkness yawned before me. The beam of my flashlight pierced the shadows, illuminating the stairs that led down into the abyss. I could hear my own breathing, quickening with every step down. At the bottom, the air was damp and still. The scratching had ceased, but an eerie silence hung heavily. I scanned the dimly lit space, heart racing. It felt like something was waiting, watching. Then, I noticed something on the ground. A small scrap of paper. My heart sank as I bent down to pick it up. It was old and yellowed, the words barely visible. They were barely legible, but they sent icy fingers of dread through me. "They're coming for you." Just as I registered the chilling message, a loud crash echoed from behind me, causing me to spin around. The door slammed shut with a definitive thud. Panic surged through me, drowning out my thoughts. I was trapped. "What is going on?" I gasped. My voice echoed back, mocking my fear. I pounded on the door, but it wouldn't budge. The scratching returned, now louder, more frantic. That's when I felt a presence in the darkness. Someone or something was there with me. I froze, the flashlight shaking in my hand. The beam danced erratically around the basement, illuminating patches of damp walls and spiderwebs. The scratching grew louder, more chaotic, like nails against wood. My heart raced, and I struggled to control my breathing. I faced the corner of the room where the sound seemed to emanate from. "Who is there?" I shouted, trying to sound braver than I felt. My voice echoed back, the darkness swallowing my words. Nothing answered. I took a cautious step forward, the beam of light revealing nothing but shadows. The scratching stopped suddenly, plunging me into a thick silence. I strained my ears, willing myself to listen, but all I heard was my own pulse pounding in my ears. And then, I saw a small figure dart to the side, just out of the range of my flashlight. The air went cold as a wave of dread washed over me. "Hello." My voice trembled as I called out again. "Is someone there?" There was no response, just the oppressive quiet. I felt as if I might drown in that darkness. Desperate and frightened, I swung my flashlight in the direction where I had seen the movement. Nothing. Just empty space and shadows. Then, a whisper floated through the air. It was faint, but it carried a distinct urgency. "Help, me." The words were barely audible but sent ice through my veins. "Who needs help?" I yelled back. "Where are you?" The whisper answered again, "In the walls." It echoed, blending with the scratching that suddenly erupted around me. Panic surged, and I stumbled backward. I pressed my body against the cold, hard door, wishing it would open. Suddenly, I heard it again, a loud crash, this time from behind the wall to my right. My mind raced. What could be in those walls? I turned my flashlight toward the source of the sound, hoping to see a crack or some sign of life. Just then, the air grew heavy and suffocating. I looked down, realizing I had dropped the scrap of paper in my rush. I bent to pick it up, my fingers trembling. Maybe it held some clue. But before I could stand straight, a loud thump came from the wall right next to me. The floor shook beneath me, sending my heart into my throat. "I need to get out," I shouted. I rushed to the door again, pounding at it with all my strength. "Let me out. Please." The door didn't budge. The scratching grew louder, accompanied by muffled thumps and whispers that filled the space, circling me like vultures. I had no choice but to go deeper into the dark, to face whatever haunted this basement. Every part of me screamed to run, but a pull inside urged for answers. That's when I heard a voice, louder and clearer this time. "You shouldn't have come down here." I turned toward the shadow, my flashlight flickering as fear crashed over me like a wave. I was not alone after all. I took a hesitant breath, trying to steady myself. "Who are you?" I asked. The shadows shifted, revealing a figure just beyond the circle of light. It was small, almost childlike, but the dark made it impossible to see clearly. "Please," it whispered again, "you have to help." I stepped back, desperate for an escape but drawn in by a strange curiosity. "Help with what?" The figure flinched slightly, disappearing into the wall for a moment before re-emerging. Its voice grew more frantic. "They won't stop. They're in the walls. You have to listen." My heart raced. I glanced around, feeling the weight of the basement squeeze in on me. The scratching returned, more frantic than ever, like desperate fingers clawing at the wood. I shone my flashlight closer, illuminating the figure's wide, terrified eyes. A chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean?" I asked, feeling my voice shake. "What's in the walls?" "They want out." It pointed to the far corner where the sound seemed to coalesce. "They can't breathe." My mind spun. This had to be a nightmare. I wanted to run, but part of me knew if I left, I might never uncover the truth. "Why are you here?" I pressed, desperate for any clue. "I was just like you," it said, its eyes tremoring with fear. "I came to help, but I can't leave now." The walls seemed to close in, echoing its words. I felt a swell of anger mixing with fear. "No. I can't be trapped here," I yelled, spinning in the small space. The scratching intensified, and I felt the floor quake again. Then everything went still. It was so quiet I could hear my own breath. I turned back to the figure, but it was gone. My flashlight flickered once more, and I stumbled, glancing around in a panic. Just then, I noticed a small hole in the wall, barely big enough for a hand. A low, muffled voice came from within. "Help us!" The hair on my neck stood tall as I approached the hole. I crouched down, heart pounding. "Who's in there?" I asked, trying to steady my voice. "Please," the voice begged. "We're trapped. You have to let us out." The fear that had clawed at me transformed into a desperate need to understand. What was going on in this basement? I reached toward the hole, feeling drawn to the sound. As my fingers brushed the rough surface, I heard a chorus of voices, all pleading. I yanked my hand back, the chill of their desperation shocking me. "What do I do?" I shouted. "How do I help you?" "Listen, follow the sound," the voices urged, growing fainter. My heart raced with dread. If I wanted answers, I had to dig deeper into whatever this was. Before I could rethink my choice, I pressed my ear to the wall. The scratching started again, frantic and disorienting. It was coming from all around me. "Wait!" I whispered, backing away. "What are you?" But then the shadows flared to life, and all at once, the scratching stopped. The basement grew silent, and I realized I was no longer alone. Someone was behind me. I spun around, heart racing, the dim beam of my flashlight flickering against the cold, damp walls. The figure I had sensed moments ago was now directly behind me. A tall silhouette loomed, shrouded in shadows, its features obscured. Who are you?" I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure didn't respond right away. It simply stood there, watching. I could feel its gaze penetrating the darkness, and my skin crawled with unease. Finally, it took a step forward, and in the small beam of my flashlight, I caught a glimpse of familiar features. It was the childlike figure from before, but now the eyes gleamed with an unsettling brightness. "You shouldn't have listened," it said, voice shaky yet filled with urgency. "You need to leave. Now." I wanted to ask why, but the words caught in my throat. "What did you mean when you said they're trapped?" "It's not just them. It's all of us." The figure's head tilted, and I could see its small frame trembling. "You don't know what's in the walls. You have to trust me." This place it wants to keep you. The scratching resumed, louder than before, a cacophony of distress that reverberated through the basement. My heart raced even faster. What does it want? I yelled out, a mix of fear and anger boiling within me. It feeds on fear, the figure said, its voice barely audible over the rising noise. I felt a chill settle over me. It wants you to fear it. If you leave now, it can't reach you. I took a half step back, uncertainty creeping in. Part of me wanted to flee, to run away from the chaos, from the pleading voices, and from this strange apparition. But something deep within pushed me to stay. And if I stay? Then you might end up like me. Like them, it whispered. Or worse. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the basement, causing dirt and dust to rain down from above. I jumped, adrenaline flooding my veins. More noises erupted from the walls, thumps and scrapes mixed with more frantic cries. I couldn't tell if they were coming from inside the space or beyond it. Please. I gasped. What do I do? Follow the sound, it repeated urgently. Find the source. But be careful. Before I could respond, the figure dissolved into the shadows again, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. Panic took hold of me, and I felt trapped in a nightmare with no clear way out. The walls felt alive, shifting and groaning as the frantic cries continued. Determined, I pressed my ear back to the wall, trying to focus on the pleas that echoed within. I pushed aside the dread creeping into my mind. That's when I heard it, a soft cry beneath the clamor, clearer now, calling out, "Help please!" I drew in a shaky breath. I had to see what was on the other side, but as I raised my flashlight, the light flickered violently, plunging me back into darkness. The sound of scratching grew louder, and a new, tangible fear gripped me. Then everything went black. I jolted awake to a low hum, like distant strumming on a guitar string, the darkness feeling thick around me. My flashlight lay flickering on the ground, casting sporadic beams. A shiver danced up my spine. I pushed myself up, realizing I must have lost consciousness. I blinked, trying to push away the heaviness in my mind. Shadows flickered as the beam sputtered in and out, struggling against the encroaching dark. The cries had faded, replaced by a creeping silence that felt almost suffocating. My heartbeat echoed in the stillness, and I knew I had to move. I scrambled to my feet, keeping my flashlight steady, casting light across the cluttered basement. Boxes and old furniture loomed in the flickering light, their shapes shifting like specters. I turned, searching for any sign of that childlike figure or the source of the cries. "Help please!" the voice slipped back into my mind, haunting and desperate. It was closer now. With each step, I felt a pull, like unseen fingers beckoning me deeper into this place. I hesitated at the wall, where the sound seemed to seep through an unsettling chorus of whispers that twisted my gut. What does it want? I muttered to myself, trying to drown out the panic that crawled up my throat. As I pressed my ear to the wall, a rush of cold air brushed my face, carrying with it a strange scent, earthy and musty. It was familiar, but I couldn't place it. The whispers intensified, urging me to listen. "Help us!" I took a deep breath and knocked on the wall, hard. The sound echoed back to me, but then it changed, a slow, hollow thud that sent a jolt through me. I pulled away, heart racing, but the fear was quickly replaced with desperate curiosity. Backing away from the wall, I scanned the room for anything that could help me dig deeper. My flashlight caught on an old shovel leaning against a corner, caked in grime. I grabbed it, its weight providing a strange sense of comfort. I approached the section of wall where the sound seemed to pulse. Taking a moment, I steadied myself, heart pounding, the echo of the cries growing clearer in my ears. Gritting my teeth, I swung the shovel against the wall with all my might. The impact rattled the basement, sending dust dancing in the air, and a crack snaked through the plaster. My breath hitched as I saw a small fissure opening up, revealing darkness beyond. Another swing, and more plaster crumbled away, revealing a glimpse of what lay on the other side. "Help! Please. The voice was now frantic, but something shifted in the air, causing me to freeze. I bent down, shining my light through the growing crack, and that S when I saw it. A pair of wide, terrified eyes stared back at me from the shadows. My stomach dropped, and all at once, a wave of dread washed over me. Before I could react, a loud crash shattered the air from behind, causing the ground to tremble beneath me. I turned, flashlight shaking in my hand, and that S when I realized I wasn't alone in the basement anymore. I spun around, my heart racing, the beam of my flashlight skimming across the room. Fear curled in my stomach at the sight of the scattered boxes, but they were still. I breathed in, trying to steady myself. It had to be my imagination, just the house creaking. Then I heard it again, another crash. This time, it felt like it came from deeper within the basement, beyond the wall I had just attacked. A few more breaths and I took a step back toward the wall, focused on the crack where I had seen those eyes. "What do you want?" I whispered, my voice trembling. From the shadows, the eyes widened even more as if urging me to understand something. I couldn't shake the sense of urgency in their plea. But I also felt the weight of whatever lurked in the dark, and my instincts screamed for me to be cautious. I grabbed the shovel again and edged closer to the wall, scrapes of plaster still lying at my feet. The whispers returned, clearer now, "Please don't leave." It struck me hard. Was the child trapped? I needed to act fast. With renewed determination, I set my feet, raised the shovel, and swung once more. This time, the impact was not just noise. A section of the wall gave way, revealing more than just darkness. Something flickered in the shadows, a pale hand slipping through the gap, reaching out toward me. I dropped the shovel, frozen. What? I couldn't finish the thought. The hand trembled but did not pull back. It beckoned, urging me closer. The air grew colder, and instinctively, I took a step back. But the whispers intensified, swirling around me, pressing against my ears. "Help us." The voice now echoed through the basement, shaking with desperation. I had to make a choice: help the child or flee. Just then, a figure emerged from the darkness that had crept in. It was tall and undefined, obscured by shadows, but I could feel its eyes locking on me. My breath quickened. "Who are you?" I asked, though I already regretted saying it. "Leave her," the figure hissed, its voice low and gravelly. "She is not what you think." "Who are you talking about?" I stammered. The pale hand was still there, trembling and reaching, but there was something foreboding in the figure's tone. "Stay away." It charged toward me, and instinct seized me. I spun on my heel and bolted toward the stairs, heart pounding hard. In my haste, I barely made it 2 steps up when I heard the sound of shuffling behind me, unnerving and relentless. "Help!" The child's voice rang out once more, echoing in my ears as I stumbled up toward the light. The cold swept around my ankles, and doubt gripped me: had I made the wrong choice? I sprinted for the basement door, but I could feel something sinister chasing me, an unseen presence grasping at my back. My foot caught on the edge of the last step, and I tumbled forward, crashing into the door just as it opened. Then everything went dark. I awoke with a start, my heart racing just like before. Light flooded the room, invasive and blinding, but I could barely focus. I pressed my back against the door, breathless and disoriented. Had I really been down there? Had I heard a child's voice? I blinked several times, trying to shake off the haze. The cold sensation that had wrapped around my ankles was gone, but the memory clung to me like a shadow. I pushed myself off the floor and glanced around, feeling the familiar weight of anxiety pressing down on my chest. The sunlight filtering through the windows felt too bright, too cheerful for the dread that filled my mind. Slowly, I stood up and stepped into the hallway. I needed to figure out what happened. Maybe it was all just a nightmare, but the voice, it felt all too real. I crept toward the basement door, apprehension bubbling up again. The house was silent, but it felt charged, as if it were holding its breath. I put a hand on the doorknob. It felt cold and unyielding. Perhaps my instincts were right to scream at me to stay away. But curiosity, mixed with a streak of guilt, pulled me forward. What if that voice was real? What if someone needed my help? Taking a deep breath, I opened the door, the hinges creaking like a warning. The basement lay before me, untouched and shadowed, a dark maw that seemed to invite me in. I flicked on the breaker, and the light flickered weakly to life. As it illuminated the space, the remnants of my earlier frenzy scattered in disarray came into focus, but all signs of the wall I had breached were gone. Nothing. Just an unremarkable space filled with boxes and old furniture. I stepped forward cautiously, glancing around. I felt foolish for having felt scared before. The child's voice had been so insistent, so urgent. But where was it now? That S when I noticed it a glimmer of something faint behind a stack of boxes. It shimmered, catching the light in a way that made my heart quicken. I brushed aside the boxes, revealing an old mirror, crusted with dust but still intact. My reflection stared back at me, wide-eyed and frightened. Suddenly, the air shifted. I felt the temperature drop, and the whispering returned, even more frantic this time. "Help us." The voice echoed in my mind, but it was no longer coming from my own thoughts. I yanked my gaze from the mirror, heart thundering again. And then, I saw it. A shadow, distinct from the random dark corners, forming near the stairs. It was crouched, almost childlike, and I could see the outline small, fragile. But before I could call out, it melted back into the recesses of the basement, disappearing as if it were never there. Panic surged like ice through my veins. Had I truly seen it? Or was the exhaustion from my earlier scare playing tricks on me? I felt drawn to the corner where it had been, longing to see if the child might return. The whispers pulsed louder around me, twisting through the air, blending with my desperate thoughts. "Help us please." I could feel its presence lurking just at the edge of my vision, teasing me to follow. My gut twisted. I had to know. But if it was asking for help, what would I find if I ventured deeper? Just as I was reaching for the next box, the basement door slammed shut behind me. My heart dropped. I wasn't alone anymore. The loud bang of the door rattled me to my core. My heart raced, and I turned, half expecting to see someone standing there. But the basement was just as I'd left it, dark and still. I took a shaky step closer to the door, hands trembling as I fumbled for the knob. It wouldn't budge. It was locked from the outside. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling. No answer. Only the silence of the basement weighed heavy on my shoulders. As I steadied myself, the whisper persisted. "Help us. Please." It wrapped around me like a cold fog. I felt it pulling me in deeper, away from the door and toward the corner where I'd seen the shadow. Each step felt apprehensive, the ground cold beneath my feet. I wanted to scream for help, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I approached the corner cautiously, where the lingering memory of that childlike figure still resided in my mind. The boxes loomed like sentinels, hiding whatever lay behind them. The whisper escalated again, more frenzied this time. I could almost hear the desperation. I needed to see what was hidden, and yet my instincts screamed to turn back. Suddenly, a rustling noise broke through the heavy silence. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. Something was moving behind the boxes. Slowly, I peered around the edge, barely willing to breathe. That S when I saw it again, a small hand, pale and thin, darting back as if it had sensed my gaze. "Please help us." The voice cracked, sounding younger and more terrified. I took a step back. "Who's there?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a moment of silence, and then the air thickened with a sense of urgency. A small figure emerged hesitantly from behind the boxes, just a flicker of motion, curly hair, wide eyes, and a face streaked with dirt. The child looked at me, and my heart sank. You found me, the child said softly, but then she looked terrified. Why are you down here? I managed to choke out, my fear mixing with confusion. They're coming, she said, her voice trembling. You have to help us get out. Before I could respond, the floor beneath us trembled, and the lights flickered. My breath caught again, and I felt something rumble in the walls. The sound echoed, deep and resonant, clawing at the very fabric of my sanity. What is happening? I shouted, the panic creeping into my voice. Please. The child's eyes widened, and she reached for me. We have to hide. Without thinking, I grabbed her hand, and we rushed toward a section of the basement that felt less exposed. I spotted a gap between the boxes leading to a shadowy alcove. It was a small, cramped space, but better than being out in the open. We squeezed in, and I held my breath, hoping that whatever was coming wouldn't find us. The sounds grew louder, a cacophony of whispers and scratching. I pressed my back against the cold wall, forcing myself to remain still. What was down there with us? Was this truly happening, or was I losing my mind? Then, out of the chaos, a low voice whispered just inches from my ear, "Let them come out." My heart dropped. I turned to the child beside me, her frightened stare reflecting my own growing dread. What had I gotten myself into? The whispers swirled around us like a storm, clawing at my sanity. The child trembled beside me, her small hand gripping mine like a vice. I could feel the oppressive fear and darkness close in tighter, each heartbeat synchronizing with the scratching from the walls, as if they were alive and hungry. "Don't let it touch you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Before she could finish, something heavy hit the ground nearby, causing dust to swirl in the dim light. I held my breath, anticipation mixed with terror saturating the air. The whispers turned ominous, an unsettling chorus of half-formed voices, echoing a warning and a threat at once. "What are we hiding from?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The child pressed her back against the wall, her eyes wide with fear. "You don't understand. They want out. And if they get out they'll take you, too," she said, her voice shaking. "What do you mean?" I could hardly breathe. "Who are they?" She opened her mouth, but suddenly the darkness felt electric. A whisper cut through the chaos, clearer than before, "Open the door." The weight of those words sent shivers through me, my gut twisting in dread. The air grew still, and I felt a strange pull, an urge to obey. I fought against it, heart pounding. No. I wanted to let them out. But the child's wide eyes seemed to hold something I couldn't comprehend. "You don't have to be scared. We can help each other," she pleaded. The ground rumbled again, and the echoes grew louder, surrounding us, drowning out rational thought. "Help please" floated through the darkness, wrapping around me like tendrils. Memories of the earlier encounter flooded my mind, the face I had seen behind the wall, the frantic cries, the hopelessness. I shook my head, trying to dispel the suffocating panic. "There has to be a way out of this," I murmured. As if in response, the shadows crept closer, coiling like serpents, and a sudden crash echoed nearby. The child jumped at the sound, her grip tightening. "Follow me," I shouted, urgency bursting through my fear. I took her hand, guiding her out of our cramped hiding spot. "If they're trapped, maybe we can find a way to help them, maybe we can find a way out ourselves." Together, we darted through the space between the boxes, dodging the unseen chaos that lurked around us. I turned back toward the wall, where the whispers still resonated, beckoning. I approached the crack I had opened earlier, heart racing. It felt like a doorway to the unknown, and maybe, just maybe, the way to freedom. "Stay close," I instructed as I dropped to my knees, aiming the flashlight toward the opening. The dim circle of light illuminated the dark fissure, where shadows danced in the gaps. "Help us." The voices pleaded, more urgent now. "Please. We're trapped." Taking a deep breath, I pressed my ear against the wall, desperate to hear. "What do you want us to do?" I shouted, feeling reckless, adrenaline surging. Open the door. They cried as if the words were slithering straight into the depths of my mind. The child's eyes widened with fear. No. Don't do it. She screamed, but I felt a compulsion, a dark desire to comply. I forced myself to look away, shaking my head. I can't. I want tea. I backed away from the wall, breathless and trembling. The ground shook again, sending a panic through the air like a spark. I turned to the child and grabbed her hand. We need to get out of here. Now. Together, we raced back toward the staircase, toward the door that led outside, thick with tension and confusion. The whispers swirled around us, each echo wrestling between pleading and menace. My heart pounded as we neared the door. But as we reached the last few steps, a cold gust of wind slammed the door shut before us. I stumbled, heart sinking. No. No. We were almost out. I struggled against the door, pushing with all my might. The child joined me, but it wouldn't budge. Help, please listen. I shouted. It seemed to anger the shadows, and the sounds intensified. It felt like they were converging upon us, scratching at our resolve. I pressed my hand against the wood, desperately willing it to yield. Help us. We can't stay here. Why not? I shouted into the chaos, desperate for some clarity, some sense in the madness. Because the child whispered, eyes wide, teetering on the edge of despair. Because they don't want you to leave. Suddenly, all the whispers fell silent, leaving only the sound of my heart thudding in my ears. I turned to the child, my heart racing. What does that mean? The figure emerged again, fluidly from the darkness, its gaze fixed on us. You must choose, it said, voice echoing through the basement like a spell. Do you stay or do you help? I glanced between the child and the figure, my mind a whirlwind of confusion. Help with what? What happens if I do? The creature smiled a chilling, hollow grin. Then we will be free. And you shall join us. Screams filled the air, flickering like distant candles. My instincts kicked in, I clutched the child's hand, resolute. I knew what I had to do. Follow me. I yelled, as the ground shook again, and we sprinted toward the other side of the basement, ignoring their pleas as the shadows twisted in fury behind us. We crashed against a pile of loose boards, each splinter demanding to be seen. Help me. The child cried, scrambling ahead. My heart shattered under the weight of her fear, but I kept pushing forward, searching for any nook, any cranny that would lead us out. But the voices grew angry around us, rising into a dissonant roar. Shadows surged, and just as we found an opening in the debris, icy tendrils latched onto my ankle, pulling me down. No. I gasped, fighting against their grip. Let go. The child screamed, her small voice breaking through the chaos. Keep going. Determination surged through her, and I felt the ferocity of her spirit. With a desperate lunge, I pulled myself forward, unearthing shards of light in the chaos. I didn't look back, I had to trust in the power of escape. I pushed ahead through the opening just as the shadows closed, flowing like dark water over everything around me. My body broke through, and the light hit me like a wave, pushing me forward until I stumbled, landing hard on the grass outside. The child followed closely behind, panting yet triumphant. We took in the familiar sense of fresh air, the world outside feeling as new as a rebirth. But the darkness loomed behind us, undulating and waiting. I turned back, seeing the basement door slowly creak closed, whispering my name in a hushed coaxing tone. Jenna. I held the child's hand tighter, breathless. What now? I asked, my voice steadying, already mourning what I may have escaped but might never understand. I don't know, she replied. But at least we're out. The shadows seemed to shift, gathering like a thunderous storm just beyond the door. It felt wrong to leave unanswered questions hanging, but I knew I had escaped this time at least for now. I glanced back at the house but couldn't shake the feeling that something still awaited, still watched from the shadows. We walked away slowly, uncertain yet unyielding, my heart heavy with questions that thrummed in the back of my mind. And even though we were outside, part of me wondered would we ever truly be free?